Hello, audience, and welcome to the first ever video at my new place. Don't worry, this lighting will be fixed. I just don't have all my lights here yet and set up, so that won't be a problem. I'm aware there's a lot of change, there's a lot of different stuff going on, but I promise you, if we stand together and we brace for change, we can get over this haircut. It's bad, I'm aware. Just let's move on and jump into the review. Because I want to talk about Princess Mononoke, probably my favorite Studio Ghibli movie I have seen, though I've only seen about 3 of them, so I'm not exactly informed on the entire catalog. But I recently rewatched this with a friend, and it inspired me to possibly start a new video series here, where I go through and review a new Ghibli movie every week. Obviously, if this video completely bombs, that won't exactly be happening, because it's my job and I need to make sure my channel is healthy. But I would like to give it a go because after rewatching Princess Mononoke, I was blown away by Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki's ability to craft a story in pretty much just near perfection. This is not only one of the best animated films I have ever seen, if not the best, it's probably just one of the best fantasy stories I've ever watched on a screen. And I mean that comparing against live action as well. When I go into a movie, one of the things I really like to look for is just creativity in storytelling, and Princess Mononoke has that in spades. And we're going to get into the first element here, which is the world building. Now, animation for Studio Ghibli is praised all the time, and I feel no need to layer on top of that. So yes, visually it's gorgeous, but the actual storytelling that happens with the visuals is extraordinary. The prime example of this obviously is the magical forest itself. This dark yet beautiful terrain inspires such a strong reaction from the viewer, and that's not just because we have the offhanded comments from humans saying how it's so dangerous and dark and disturbing, and yet to nature itself and those who are more connected to it, it seems not to be, but it's how it looks. It's this ominous vibe that does not shy away, though, from exploring the beauty of nature. There's even these little shaky head, adorable spirits that live in the forest with the cutest little butts ever. And as soon as those came on screen in my most recent viewing, I just immediately became aware of how well done the crafting of the vibe of this forest was. From the nature gods, the spirits, the vegetation itself, and the lighting. Everything makes this forest come to life, and the mythology around it really adds it as its own character to this narrative. And obviously, it's deeply symbolic within the larger themes of this story, but we'll get into that in a minute. Branching off from there, though, we have locations like Irontown, which are in stark contrast to the forest itself. While the greens, browns, and blues of the forest are on full display, once we're in Irontown, it's much more of blacks, reds, and burnt oranges that come to prominence. It's not exactly ugly, but it certainly reflects the industrialization that mankind is going through within this story. It's the usage of color, it's the small details like spirits, the moments this movie takes to just enjoy and sit in the world that is being built. Constantly we are taking a breath. It never hurts the pacing because every time it occurs, we have much to enjoy. Overall, I just really love this part of Princess Mononoke, and it's one that I want to heap praise on because you become so, this word is overused in reviews, immersed within the world built in such a short period of time. I've seen entire TV shows that build fantastical worlds that do not feel as alive and lived in as this less than 2-hour movie is able to accomplish. With Studio Ghibli's first full CG movie set to be released before too long, I'm curious to see if they will be able to maintain the raw artistic visual appeal they have had up until this point. Really, with how creative the minds are over there, I wouldn't be surprised, but I just want to get it out of the way that the overall presentation of Princess Mononoke is head and shoulders above what you can normally expect, even from the most beautiful animes themselves. But let's go ahead and jump away from the world building here and talk about how actually that ties into the next element, the character. I already said how the forest itself definitely feels like a character, which probably is oversaid in reviews about Princess Mononoke. I haven't read them, but I assume a lot of people are saying that. But then we have these physical representations of nature itself. From the boar god at the beginning, who's been directly driven mad as a result of mankind's advancement into his territory and the usage of their technology. The wolves, who play a major role in this overall story and are very well realized. They have so much agency, and they are such a great, I don't know to call them pro or antagonist here, because that's another thing with character that Princess Mononoke does so well. We are never exactly sure whose side we're on, and there's no inherent good or bad person. Let's just look at Lady Eboshi, someone who, in a probably dumber version of this same story being told, would just be the bad guy. But Lady Eboshi is not at all. In fact, she's doing a lot of good for humanity. She's taking in the rejects of society, giving them a job, giving them a living, giving them respect. Things like even the lepers are welcome into her fortress and given a home and cared for. That's a beautiful person. That's someone you can love and get behind as a character. But she's looking out for her own, and as a result, she is directly stepping into the territory of these nature spirits and gods that we come to also care about from this story. Such a beautiful combination. And Ashitaka, our main character himself, you'd expect, and again, maybe a more simple version of the same story being told, to find a side and stick with it in the narrative. But he doesn't. In fact, I would say Ashitaka, borderline at points, is a passive protagonist. He's not really, because he does directly affect the outcomes of conflicts several times, and he makes his own decisions. But it also feels like many of the conflicts within this story would have happened similar to how they did without his interference. He's more or less just a continual straw breaking camels' backs, nudging things in the proper direction, and preventing complete catastrophe, although horrible things still do continue to happen here. In fact, this isn't a criticism, but I do find it to be true. Ashitaka has what seems to be the smallest character arc of nearly anyone here. San, or Princess Mononoke, has quite the arc. Lady Eboshi does as well, and even the monk, who's working for pretty negative, probably the closest to a bad guy position we have, has a bit of growth here. Ashitaka himself, though, comes in almost as an outside observer. Just kind of through his lens, we get established the different side of the conflicts, and while he does intervene, he never takes a side. He just fights for, in the moment, what he believes is right. And I think that's a wonderful stand-in for the audience itself. Because as we are not presented a clear-cut right answer to this conflict, except the warlord, that dude's a piece of shit. Having a character who seems to be struggling in a similar manner just kind of makes you all the more invested in the story. In my first time viewing this, I think like many viewers, I was most interested in San as a character. I absolutely loved her, and I still adore her kind of representation and symbol within the narrative of being, okay, humanity was once closer to nature. We were much more a part of this forest at one point, and we still could be, but we're branching away from that. And seeing her be this manifestation of where humanity probably came from versus where we are during this industrial phase is magnificent. It doesn't overwhelm her character. She's not just a blatant symbol, but it's definitely there. But now it's Lady Eboshi I find myself most fascinated by. I don't think I've seen a character like her before, and it would have been so easy to just make her the bad guy, make her the villain, but the story is so much better as a result because she isn't. The moral conflict is better realized because of it, the stakes are higher, and you as the viewer have a lot more to think about. We do have antagonists, don't get me wrong, and Lady Eboshi works on their sides. Ashitaka, even at points, is helping the more antagonistic side of things, but really there's no consistent, okay, this is the antagonist-protagonist standpoint. I find the wolf god to be just as guilty as things as humanity at points. Now from here, let's just go ahead and slide into themes, because we're already pretty much talking about that in general. There are some kind of heavy-handed themes within Princess Mononoke, if I'm putting it lightly. But just because they're heavy-handed does not mean they aren't landed well. And I do find them to be quite effectively communicated in a way where I find myself thinking about the ideas discussed and realized here. Not only because, as I covered, the characters have such great agency in exploring these ideas, and the presentation of the ideas themselves are so vivid and real, but also because this story has enough restraint to never just say, here's the right answer. Here's what you, the viewer, should think, and move on from there. No. It almost feels like an inevitability at the end here, where I'm not going to get into spoilers, but I will say, it seems like, humanity is going to end up violating nature. It's unavoidable. It's our future. In a dark, twisted way, it's our destiny, and we will drive more gods insane and violate the balance that exists in the world. But there's still somehow growth and hope. It's an interesting, conflicting feeling I'm left with, and it makes it so I think about Princess Mononoke after viewing it for quite a few days, to the point where actually during my move here recently, I was packing up boxes thinking like, how much am I wasting by picking up my whole life and moving across the world? And it's not just a blunt environmental message. There's more of a spiritual overtone to it than that. What is our own connection with nature? I used to go camping and live in the woods quite often, but I haven't done it in a long, long time. Has that had some form of greater effect on my psyche? Am I disconnected to something I used to be more connected with? These are all things you cannot help but think about after reviewing this story. Just as San represents the good and bad of being connected with nature, Lady Eboshi definitely represents the pros and cons of being more industrialized, being more human. We care about each other more than ever. We are more empathetic than any other point in history. We care about one another more than ever. Not all the time. We still have problems. But we also have a very human-centric view of ourselves where nothing really matters but the progression of mankind. All these ideas war with each other so beautifully. And we see extremes as well, right? We have the extremes of the Boer tribe compared to the extremes of the warlord Lady Eboshi is dealing with. And so seeing these like kind of outstanding extremes, the more, okay, they're still at conflict standpoints, and then Ashitaka standing in the middle trying to just mitigate and deal with circumstances as they come, lends a tremendous balance to the overall narrative presented in Princess Mononoke. And I guess my concluding thoughts here really are, if you haven't watched this movie, do it already. Just in the creative storytelling, visuals alone, it's on the level of the greats like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm not just saying it's outstanding for anime, it's outstanding for film. It's on HBO Max as well as the entire Ghibli collection, so if you'd like to watch along with me in the next coming weeks, please do so. Next week I do plan on watching Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle after that, followed up by Ponyo. So that is the general plan for now. For those of you constantly asking for a TBR, you didn't get that, but you got a TBW to be watched. Anyway guys, let me know what you think of Princess Mononoke in the comments down below, because this is one I don't have criticisms for. I just have positive thoughts and a lot more to think about, and I'd like to see what you all say as well in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you'd like to support what I do here, and have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreon, Burnout. I hope you're not actually feeling that much burnout, man, and hope you're having a great start to your week. Have a good one. Peace.